I've worked long and hard to forget about the worst day of my life. Countless hours of therapy had diminished the memories into mere whispers in the farthest corners of my mind. Recent events have woken those sleeping memories. Their fangs have sunk deep into the folds of my brain, and I must once again face their agonizing sting. I could have lived the rest of my life with these memories being relegated to the very worst of my nightmares, never again having a conscious thought about them. But I am not that lucky, and fate is not that kind. When I was young, really young, so young that I would never remember these events if they hadn't been so scarring, I suffered from an unexpected and unexplainable fear of people. No traumatic trigger, no life changes, just a complete inability to be around anyone other than my parents and grandparents. We worked with doctors and therapists with marginal success. On top of my social difficulties, my family was rocked by an incident at my parents' work. My father and mother taught English and theater at the local high school. Mom often stayed late preparing for production, so my dad would use the school's weight room to work out. One night, he lost track of time and stayed much later than he had planned. As he was rushing out, a strange noise caught his attention. Each step forward brought him closer to the sound. The closer he got, the clearer he could hear it. A cry? A whimper? A moan? Dad followed the noise until he found himself in the last place he wanted to be. The noise was coming from the girls' locker room. He pushed the door open and rushed inside. Whatever he imagined would be inside could not compare to the horrors he would find. On the floor, he found Mr. Clark, the science teacher, hunched over one of the senior students. When the student saw him, she screamed and covered herself. While my dad was by no means in trouble, he was heavily involved in the investigation. He was the main witness to the crime, as the student was unwilling to testify. Mr. Clark had convinced her they were soulmates, that he was going to leave his wife and be with her. My heart goes out to that poor girl. Because the student was 18, although barely, and Mr. Clark was only 25, a handful of parents and students questioned his firing and the criminal investigations that followed. There was even discussion about my dad and how he had no right to break into the women's locker room. They were definitely a minority, but they were very vocal, and they were active. They left notes in our mailbox, threw rocks at our windows, and even spray-painted perv and snitch on our car. It all really got to my dad. He even considered quitting. To show their support, the school invited my dad to be a guest of honor at the homecoming football game. Dad thought it was important that he attended, but he wanted us to go as a family. Mom was obviously worried about how I'd handle it, but she hoped if she kept me close, I'd be all right. As soon as we left the car, I began to shake. Mom attempted to soothe me, but the evening was off to a rough start. By the time the game started, I was clinging desperately to my mother and on the verge of a meltdown. Mom did everything she could to console me. Then the band started up. The sudden loud noise immediately sent me into a screaming episode. My parents stood to leave, doing their best to keep me as quiet as possible until we were out of the stadium, when I abruptly stopped crying. My parents looked at me and followed my gaze. Running across the field, leading the charge of student athletes, was the school mascot. He was just a teenager in a Saga Bulldog costume, but he was something magical to me. Not only did my episode end, for what could have been the first time in my life, I started giggling. The whole game, I kept my eyes fixed on the Bulldog, laughing at his flips and cartwheels. When halftime rolled around, the mascot walked over to a small courtyard next to the concession stand to take pictures. Mom asked if I wanted to take a picture with him, and I emphatically nodded. She carried me down. While we waited, I began to get restless, nervous, anxious. The mascot must have noticed because when I got to the front of the line, he squatted down to my level and stuck out his fist. I hesitated, but returned the gesture, lightly tapping the dog's massive fist. He flung his hand back and then shook it while shaking his head. He then jumped to his feet, pointed at me, and then flexed his arm. I smiled widely, barely containing another giggle. The bulldog stretched out his arms, and my mom handed me to him. He sat me on his knee and supported my back with one arm while flexing with his other. I mimed his gesture, flexing my tiny arm, and my mom snapped a picture. After that game, I slowly started to get better. I was no social butterfly, but I was able to accompany my parents in public without losing my mind. The more games we attended, the more silly dances he did with the cheer team, the more of the little footballs he would throw to me after a touchdown, the better I got. My parents never figured out why I was so infatuated with him, but it didn't really matter. Each game pulled me farther out of my shell. The last picture I took with the bulldog was the first round of playoffs, which meant little to my younger self except that there would be far less seating and far more noise. My parents were never punctual, and that night was no different. We arrived at the stadium with only minutes before kickoff and a line halfway out of the parking lot. It moved rather quickly, but I still felt we waited for eternity. We were still a few spots from the ticket booth when I heard the blast of trumpets and the thumping of drums that always heralded the beginning of the game. I whined to my dad, but he shushed me. The music began to roar, the crowd began to cheer, and the ground shook as a herd of young men roared across the field. Yet we were still standing in line, still missing the bulldog. So, I did the most logical thing my little brain could think of. I ran. I bolted out of the line and through the gate. My dad yelled after me, but I didn't listen. I weaved through the crowd of people and made it to the field just in time to see the teams line up for kickoff. I missed it, the thing I had been looking forward to all week. Tears began to coat my eyes until I felt a weight on my shoulder. I turned and found the bulldog looming over me, his hand gripping me. I squealed with excitement before wrapping myself around his leg. I expected an embrace or some sign of warmth, but nothing came. I looked up into his gaping black eyes. His signature animated enthusiasm was gone, replaced by a cold stiffness. The only movement he made was the rising and falling of his chest with each heavy breath he took. The longer he stared, the more uncomfortable I became. I let go of his leg and backed away. Each step I took, he shuffled the same distance until my back was against the fence. For a moment, it looked like he was about to reach toward me until a harsh voice rang out, calling my name. My dad stomped toward me, fire in his eyes. He scooped me up and swatted me on the bottom. I would have cried if I hadn't been so relieved to see him, which just made me want to cry more. He carried me to the stands, lecturing me about safety the whole way. As we walked away, I watched the mascot tilt his head to the side and stare me down. I turned back to my father and clung tightly to him. The stands were packed with parents and students like sardines in a tin. We were barely able to squeeze into a row beside the farthest end of the stands. As the game continued, the bulldog only acted stranger. He just stood, scanning the stands until a cheerleader prompted him to either dance or watch the game. Whenever we scored, the bulldog would lazily toss the mini footballs, barely making them to the stands at all. It was like he had completely forgotten the traditions I once held so dear. At one point, he wandered across the sidelines to our side of the stands. His empty black eyes scanned the concrete steps until he spotted me. He brought his hand up slowly and waved at me. I turned and tugged on my mom's sleeve, but she was too wrapped up in the game. When I looked back, he was being pulled away by one of the cheerleaders. For the rest of the game, I would catch him staring up at me from various places on the sideline. His eyes never seemed to leave me. Just before halftime, my dad asked me if I wanted to get a hot dog. I agreed instantly. He could have asked if I wanted to see the dentist, and I still would have agreed. I'd have done anything to get me away from those hollow eyes. We pushed through the crowds until we reached the concession stand. A long line of people had already gathered. My dad was irritated at the wait, but the crowd of people made me feel more secure. Then one of the cheerleaders spoke. "Line up for a picture with Fight O." My stomach dropped. I looked over my shoulder and saw the gray, sagging frame of the mascot, his black eyes glaring directly at me. I was frozen in thick, heavy terror. Dad noticed I turned and followed my gaze. "Do you want a picture, bud?" I wanted to scream at him for even thinking I'd want to be anywhere near that thing, but fear wrapped its fingers around my throat. I couldn't even manage to shake my head. My dad's face dropped into a frown. "Come on, buddy, don't get shy on me." The line was short. Only half a dozen people separated us from him. Each photo took less and less time. He hardly looked at the kids, keeping his eyes locked on me. It was our turn before I knew it. My dad handed me over to the mascot's outstretched arms. I tensed up as his dark sockets looked down onto me. He'd never looked so scary to me. My dad snapped a picture and reached for me. The mascot held tightly onto my hand. In an instant, the bulldog pulled me to him and took off. My face was pressed into the scratchy fabric of his costume, obscuring my vision. Dad was screaming my name, but his voice trailed off as the bulldog took me further away from the crowd. We were nearly out of the back gate when an officer tackled us. I flew from the mascot's hands and slid across the grass. They fought for a moment before the bulldog landed a shot across the officer's jaw and ran into the woods that neighbored the stadium. Just as he disappeared into the trees, I saw him glance back at me. The police combed the woods for hours, but only found the torn remnants of the mascot's gloves. My parents, the student athletes, faculty, and the mascot's parents were all questioned, but no one had any clue why the student, a boy named Ryan Osmond, would do such a thing, nor where he would be hiding. The cheerleaders reported he hadn't even shown up for the pre-game warm-up. He only showed up when the game started. The game was canceled, and after hours of questioning, we were allowed to go home. Mom and Dad sent me straight to bed. I was out the second my head hit the pillow. My sleep was restless and filled with the image of that damn dog. I woke shortly after in complete blackness. I squinted and glanced around the room, but only saw the vague features of my furniture. I was about to drift off again when I heard the squeal of old hinges. A streak of moonlight crept through my window, illuminating the space in front of my closet. The door slid slowly on its hinges, revealing the complete darkness inside. From that darkness, I could hear deep, muffled breathing. I sat frozen in fear. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. Slowly, his face crept out of the shadows, revealing his features one by one. His sagging gray skin, his toothy underbite, his hollow black eyes. The light reflected off of something he held in his bare hand, now free from the suit. His slow breathing began to hitch. A laugh echoed out of his oversized head. Then, for the first and only time, he spoke to me. "Hello, Tommy." I screamed. The mascot was bathed in light as my dad tore into the room, brandishing a golf club. He swung, sending the metal head into the mascot's back. He let out a guttural cry, but my dad didn't stop. He swung over and over, the club thudding and cracking as he pummeled the stranger in our home. The bulldog cowered, slowly crawling away from my dad. When my dad raised the club over his head, the bulldog managed to shove his knife into my dad's foot. He grunted and stumbled back into the hallway. The bulldog turned and began charging back at me. I leapt out of bed and ran. He grabbed me by the collar with his free hand and thrust the knife down on me. I squirmed just enough for the knife to slice me in the arm, but miss my body. The wound burned as if I'd been struck with fire. He raised it and thrust the blade again, this time embedding it in my forearm. White-hot pain erupted through my entire arm. I howled in pain. Tears clouded my vision as he tore the blade out of me. Through my blurred eyes, I swear the mascot's mouth curled into a giant grin. I waited for another strike, but only a sickening crack followed. The knife clattered to the ground next to me. Through my blurry vision, I could see my dad swinging the golf club again. The mascot caught the club, and the two began fighting over it. I crawled toward them and grabbed the knife. I reared back and planted it directly in the center of the mascot's oversized foot. A deep scream erupted from behind the mask. Dad used the opportunity and pushed the mascot backwards. He struggled but couldn't resist with his injured foot. He stumbled back until he was pressed against my window. My dad took a step back before kicking the mascot square in the chest, sending him tumbling out of our home. His body hit the ground with a horrid thud. My dad hobbled to me, sobbing just as hard as I was. He held me in his arms. Over his shoulder and through the window, I could see the bulldog lying flat on his stomach. His back rose in spastic breaths. Slowly, he struggled to his feet and turned back to the window. His hollow eyes locked on mine for a moment that felt like hours. He turned and hobbled toward the woods, but only made it a few steps before he collapsed. This time he stayed down. The police arrived soon after. My mom called them while my father fought the bulldog. They unmasked him to reveal not the face of a teenager, but the disgraced science teacher who had brought my family so much turmoil. They rushed him to the hospital. He had 3 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, a concussion, numerous bruises, and a stab wound in his foot, but he lived. Dad and I were both looked at. My arm required several stitches, a cast, and physical therapy. The whole event sent me back into an anxious spiral. I didn't start school until I was 7. I've worked with multiple therapists over the years, and ultimately, I got over it. The events of that night have largely stayed in the shadows of my mind, but recent events have brought them to the surface. Mr. Clark was charged and convicted of attempted kidnapping, assault of an officer, breaking and entering, attempted murder, and probably some other stuff. In all, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He got out 2 weeks ago. I wasn't keeping up with his time because, frankly, I had put that part of my life behind me until I received an envelope in the mail. It was devoid of any typical markings and only had my name scribbled on the front. Inside was a torn page from my parents' photo album showing me in the hands of the mascot. I called the police and sent them to my childhood home, where they found my dad. He was barely breathing, a bloody golf club at his side. They don't know if he'll make it. There are police circling my block, searching up and down for any sign of him. I know that they're doing the best possible job they can, that they're doing everything they can to keep him away from me, but I can't stop fear from taking hold of me. Deep in my mind, I hear that fabric-muffled breathing. I keep trying to clear it from my mind, but sometimes it sounds like it's coming from inside my house. I'm writing this from a hotel room in Moscow. At least, I think I am. Late one evening, I boarded a train from Ekaterinburg to Moscow. Nothing unusual. I found my seat, put my bag away, and fell asleep almost immediately. I woke up just before dawn. The carriage was empty. Not quiet. Not everyone got off at a station. Empty in a way that felt wrong. No bags. No coats. No lingering warmth from other passengers. Just me and the steady rhythm of the wheels on the tracks. I assumed I'd wandered into the wrong car, so I walked toward the dining car. I walked through every single carriage. No passengers, no conductors, no staff. When I returned to my seat, my phone said we'd arrive at the next station in a few minutes. I decided to wait. Surely someone would be there. The train pulled into a city. That's when fear really set in. No cars, no people, no lights. The station was completely dark, and yet the city felt familiar. Not in a specific way, more like a deep, unsettling déjà vu, as if I had been there before. Many times, I stepped off the train. The city was small, silent, frozen in time. After wandering for a couple of hours, I returned to the station. The train was still there, doors open, waiting. The moment I sat down, it started moving. By then I was painfully hungry. As I searched the train again, I heard a sound coming from a nearby compartment. I opened the door. A table was set inside. Food. So much food. The only drink was coffee. I didn't question it. I ate like I hadn't eaten in days. When I turned away, the food was gone. Completely. I fell asleep. The next morning, everything was the same. The same station. The same city. This time, I tried to escape. I walked straight toward the forest and didn't turn back. After 3 or 4 hours, I saw it again. The train. Later, I found something like a bar in the city. I don't know where it came from. Inside, food appeared the same way it had before, suddenly, silently. And again, only coffee to drink. I ate and fell asleep right there. When I woke up, I ran to the station, hoping the train would be gone. It wasn't. Days passed. I stopped counting, until I realized the train had been moving for 30 days. Day 31. I went to the front of the train. No engineer. The control levers wouldn't move, as if they were welded in place. Then one of them began to move on its own. The train slowed down. We arrived at a different station. Rails stretched across a lake. An enormous oasis. A forest of impossibly tall oak trees surrounded everything. The platform seemed to float above the water. I stepped out and saw someone boarding the train. I followed him, but the moment he entered a compartment, he vanished. All that remained was a note. Look for the staircase to the sky. When I stepped back onto the platform, the train left without me. A boat rocked gently on the water. I got in, and it began moving by itself. The forest parted, the ground shifted, and it felt like I was floating along a river that shouldn't exist. We stopped at a stone pier. There was a door with a cipher on it. I realized it was a Caesar cipher. After cracking it, I went inside. I walked through darkness until I saw light. There was nothing there, except a spiral staircase leading upward. I climbed for 15 minutes. At the top was a hatch. I opened it and was blinded by light. I was standing on an unfamiliar station. Behind me, a completely empty train pulled away. In my pocket was my ticket, Ekaterinburg, Moscow. Train number 58. Then another train arrived. This one was full of people. Talking, laughing, alive. I got on. I made it to Moscow. Now I'm here, writing this. But sometimes I think that if I fall asleep on a train again, I'll hear that familiar rhythm of the tracks and wake up in an empty carriage. In my family, we grew up waiting for the end of the world. Any day now, the final trumpet would sound. God would send his angels to smite the wicked, uplift the righteous, and initiate the apocalypse, or so we thought back then. If you're from this tiny cornbelt town, you might have already seen the news reports. You might already know one part of our story, the part about madness, murder, and the extremes to which some people will go for their beliefs. It's what the police and the media want you to hear, but there's another side to this story as well. Our side. Most people out here take religion seriously, but none so much as Father Isaac Graves. We were a family of 5. Father Isaac, my sister Judith, my brothers Noah and Saul, and me. Our mother had abandoned the faith shortly after Saul was born, or at least, that was what Father Isaac told us. All I knew for sure was that we had moved across the country without warning, and that it was suddenly very important to Father Isaac that we never tell anyone outside the family where we lived. He claimed that secrecy was necessary to keep us safe in a fallen, godless world. But as I got older, I began to question Father Isaac's version of events. I daydreamed that maybe the real story was reversed. Maybe our mother was out there searching desperately for us. Maybe she was hiring private investigators and driving up and down these desolate county roads with her long blonde hair blowing in the wind. One day, I prayed she would turn up our long gravel driveway. She would know how to find us. Even though the property was huge and our new house was hidden from the road by acres of forest, she would honk her horn and my brothers, my sister, and I would all run out and climb into the back of her car. Then she'd take us someplace far away from here, someplace where we weren't known as that crazy preacher's kids, someplace where we didn't have to dress differently from everyone else or spend hours each day studying the Bible. Of course, I felt guilty for having such thoughts. I asked God for forgiveness every night, especially because, considering how things were going in the world, Father Isaac seemed to have been right all along. All the signs pointed to it. The political divisions, the collapsing economy, the global pandemic. The year was 2020, and it really did feel like the end of the world was just around the corner. I was afraid, not only because I feared that my convictions might not be strong enough to save me, but also because Father Isaac had quit his day job as a construction manager. He immediately used his contacts to begin some sort of massive project at the back of our property, but he refused to allow us near it or tell us what it was. All will be revealed in God's good time, he said with a small smile whenever anyone asked. Maybe it was just my lack of faith, but that wasn't good enough for me. Prices were sky high already, and nobody else in the family was old enough to work. How were we going to live? It was raining the night Father Isaac woke us up and called us down to the kitchen. On the radio, a local announcer was saying that the pandemic had gotten so bad that a lockdown was going to be declared statewide. It was the moment Father Isaac had been waiting for. He told us to go upstairs and pack our backpacks with everything we held dear because we might never be coming back. He told us not to worry because he had made a shelter where we, the faithful, could ride out the coming storm. My heart was in my throat as I followed Father Isaac out into the rainy night. There was no light pollution this far from the city, and our flashlights revealed only more and more empty fields. The signs of construction were everywhere, but there wasn't a single structure to be seen. What had Father Isaac been building out here? Part of me wondered whether he had lost his mind at last. Father Isaac bent down and revealed a man-sized metal hatch hidden in the grass. He inserted an enormous key that hung from a lanyard around his neck, right beside his cross, and unlocked it. "We'll be safe here," he explained, "until God's fire has purged this world of sin." One by one, we climbed down the ladder underneath. It was too dark to see much, but the space at the bottom seemed about as large as our living room back home. Once we were all inside, Father Isaac climbed back up and sealed the hatch behind us. Then he switched on the lights. People who saw the news footage must think that our bunker was a dark, filthy dungeon, and I can't blame them, but that's not what it looked like at first. The solar-powered lights lining those subterranean hallways were bright. The walls smelled like fresh paint. We had well water to shower with or drink, vitamin D tablets to make up for the lack of sunshine, and enough canned food for 1,260 days. According to Father Isaac, that was exactly how long the Great Tribulation would last. During our first night in the bunker, it felt like hardly any time at all. Noah and Saul exhausted themselves jumping on their newly made beds. Judith, who loved music, was thrilled to discover that Father Isaac had ordered her piano to be set up in the main room. As the middle child, I often felt overlooked by my family, and I was touched to discover that Father Isaac had remembered my love of reading and acquired 2 shelves of church-approved volumes. Noah and Saul's laughter. The haunting notes of Judith's piano echoing down the bunker hallways. The rustle of pages as I flipped through so many books. Those sounds still haunt my dreams. Father Isaac explained that he had nearly bankrupted himself with the building costs, but it didn't matter. The day was soon coming when worldly currency would be no good to anyone. There was a radio set up to monitor events in the world outside, but he cautioned us that we should listen for no more than an hour each day. There's nothing up there but corruption and tragedy, he warned us. I remember thinking suddenly of our mother and wondering how she would survive in the doomed world above. What would she have thought of Father Isaac's grand plan for surviving the apocalypse? I tried not to ask myself that question too much, because I already knew the answer. She would have told me to run. She would have told me to get as far away from Father Isaac as possible, just like she did. Then again, if I had, I would still be up there, waiting to fall victim to disease, food shortage, and God only knew what else. Thanks to Father Isaac, I was safe and sound with the rest of my family. I no longer had to worry what other people in town thought of us, or about how I was going to tell Father Isaac that I planned on moving away when I turned 18. Dozens of feet of earth and steel had cut me off from the problems of the world. Although I had never been to an amusement park or ridden a roller coaster, I imagined that it was similar to what a person must feel when a roller coaster's safety bar lowers and the wheels begin to move. For better or worse, we were all locked in for the ride. It started during the 3rd month, with a seemingly innocuous question at the dinner table. My youngest brother, 7-year-old Saul, wanted to know where the pipes went, the ones we got our water from, and the others that took away our refuse. Father Isaac provided a thorough, scientific explanation, but Saul didn't look convinced. I wondered why he even cared. Saul was Father Isaac's golden child, rambunctious and cheerful. He'd spent most of the past month racing his brother down the hallways on their miniature bikes or tossing a basketball at a hoop in the storage room. It wasn't like him to be interested in anything that he couldn't shoot into a goal. When I asked him about it later, Saul just shrugged, but when I walked past the bedroom he shared with Noah later that night, I noticed something strange. Both brothers usually snored like a sawmill, but I could only hear Noah. Peering inside, I could see Saul lying wide awake and still, his body rigid, his eyes wide and white in the dim light. I didn't know what it meant, but I hoped that whatever my little brother was going through wouldn't last. If it did, I would have to tell Father Isaac, and who could say how he might react? On the surface, our father was the same as always, strict but wholesome, and brimming with faith. Yet I could see the tension beneath the facade. As far as he was concerned, this was the defining event of his life, and he was staking everything on things going right in the bunker. A few days later, something woke me up in the middle of the night. Since Father Isaac was convinced that virtuous people had nothing to hide, there were no doors in the bunker. I was used to hearing strange sounds, and seeing the flicker of flashlights as my siblings went to the bathroom or to the kitchen for a drink of water. What I wasn't used to, however, was the whispering. I lay there in the lightless bedroom, imagining the dozens of feet of dirt above my head and asking myself whether what I was hearing might really be just wind in the pipes. Could that be why Saul had been so curious about them? Unsure, I climbed out of bed and made my way to the bathroom. To avoid drawing attention to myself, I left my flashlight behind. I had made the trip so many times, I figured that I wouldn't need it, but distances were different in the dark. The voices sounded closer, then further away, and it wasn't long before I realized that there were two of them. Finally, I spotted the glow of a flashlight that had been abandoned on the floor. It was Saul's. I peeked around the corner. Saul was standing on his tiptoes with his head in the sink, listening to the faucet. Occasionally, he would turn his face, mutter something into the drain, then wait for a response. I had been watching the confusing scene for over a minute when Saul suddenly stood up and glared at me. His eyes seemed to reflect red light, like those of a dog in a nighttime photo. There was no way he could have seen me in the pitch blackness, and yet somehow I was sure he had. I backed away slowly and returned to my room with more questions than answers, and hours passed before I managed to fall back asleep. The next morning, I found I couldn't relax during my shower. My eyes kept drifting to the drain in the center of the tile floor, as though at any minute, something horrible might come slithering out of it. After I'd finished and dried myself, I decided to try a little experiment. I tiptoed up to it, bent down, and whispered hello. Of course, there was no response. No eerie voice, no dead gray fingers or black tendrils reaching up to coil around my neck. Father Isaac, however, noticed the dark circles under my eyes and my constant yawning. My reward for staying up late was extra cleaning duty, and by evening, I barely had enough energy left to kick a soccer ball around with Noah and Saul after dinner. I usually played goalie, while 9-year-old Noah and 7-year-old Saul ran back and forth trying to score. There wasn't much space in the empty second storage room, but at least it passed the time. That night, however, Saul didn't seem to be aiming for the goal. He seemed to be aiming for me. Barely 5 minutes into our game, he kicked the ball straight into my stomach, winding me. It seemed impossible that such a small boy could do so much damage. Yet there I was, gasping for air. Ordinarily, Saul hated seeing anything hurt, even insects. He should have been running to my side to see if I was okay, but he didn't. My youngest brother stood on the other side of the cold concrete storage room, watching me suffer with a smirk on his face. "I know what you did," that little smile seemed to say, "and you'd better not do it again." I heard Saul whispering again a few nights later, but I didn't go after him. The truth was, I was becoming more than a little afraid of my little brother. Instead, I snuck into the kitchen and tried to listen from there. If I was caught, I figured I could always just say I was getting a glass of water. This time, I was sure. There was definitely someone talking inside the pipes. The voice was deep, smooth, and masculine. It reminded me of a politician giving a speech, except that I couldn't understand a single word it was saying. It sounded like gibberish, or maybe some secret code that only the speaker and Saul shared. Because regardless of what the voice said, my little brother responded to it, answering in the same garbled language. Considering Saul's other odd behavior lately, I realized that I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to tell Father Isaac. Just like Saul had before, I tried to approach the topic by asking Father Isaac questions about the bunker itself. Had he really supervised the entire construction project? Was it possible that there were hidden rooms or passages that we didn't know about? Father Isaac laughed, and told me I'd been reading too many books. Then, the next morning, something occurred that pushed Saul's nocturnal conversations completely out of my mind. War broke out in the world above. The details don't matter, especially because I now know them all to be false. At the time, however, we were only receiving a single radio station, the only one that reached the bunker. Everything sounded real, especially because it fit into Father Isaac's preconceived notion of what was about to happen. After all, pestilence was already here. Could war, famine, and death be that far behind? Even so, there were signs we could have noticed. The reporter's accent was slightly different from what we were used to, and at times he mispronounced certain words, almost like something that had never spoken a human language before and was just imitating the local reporter's mannerisms. For some reason, the differences reminded me of the voice I'd heard in the pipes. With each passing day, the news became darker, strengthening our faith and our trust in Father Isaac. Instead of depressing us, the tragedies that were supposedly happening in the world above made our bond stronger than ever. At night, we gathered around Judith's piano and sang hymns for a burning world. A year passed that way. A good year, for the most part, as long as I ignored the ominous changes in my youngest brother. By that Christmas, the loud, fun-loving side of Saul had mostly disappeared. He had become observant and sly, appearing unexpectedly and never forgetting an offense. Noah used to compete and roughhouse with his younger brother constantly. Now, however, he seemed almost afraid of him. I couldn't blame Noah, because I was scared of him too. It wasn't just the personality change. It was the way Saul seemed to know things that should have been impossible to know. As convinced as I was that we were living through the apocalypse, I couldn't help spacing out during Father Isaac's daily hour-long Bible lectures. I would let his words wash over me while I daydreamed about whatever novel I was reading at the time. No one had ever seemed to notice before, until one night Saul confronted me in the hallway. Father Isaac might not see what you're doing, he warned me, but there's someone else who does. A little while after that, Judith started taking over all of Saul's chores. I wasn't sure what he had on her. A picture of a K-pop star he'd discovered beneath her pillow, maybe, or even something more humiliating, but he was blackmailing my older sister. I was certain of it. Then, at the beginning of our second year underground, Saul began to prophesize. It started around the dinner table one Friday evening. We were having a typical meal, canned green beans, canned potatoes, and canned beef, when Saul suddenly stood up. His eyes rolled back into his head. He gripped the table until his knuckles turned white. And he spoke, in a deep, sonorous voice totally unlike his own. At 6:06, the beast will awaken. After that one enigmatic phrase, my little brother collapsed into his chair. Father Isaac was convinced that Saul was speaking in tongues, but what could his prophecy possibly mean? We all watched the clock nervously as it ticked toward the appointed time. At 6, Father Isaac turned on the radio. It was the usual doom and gloom stuff we were used to: a war report, news of radioactive fallout, climate catastrophe, and more new pandemics. Then, out of nowhere, the device emitted an awful staticky screech. The presenter and dozens of others screamed, and then the radio went silent. The clock read 6:06 p.m. It was all the proof Father Isaac needed. We had entered the final stages, and it wouldn't be long now before the kingdom of heaven was at hand. Saul had been Father Isaac's favored child before. Now it appeared that he could do no wrong. His next prophecy, however, was far more vague. "The hour has come when the faithful shall be tested," he announced suddenly after prayer, the whites of his eyes flickering beneath his rapidly blinking lashes. "We must not waver." A few days later, Father Isaac convened a family meeting in the main room after breakfast. He wanted to know whether any of us were sneaking food between mealtimes, because our supplies had begun to disappear. He made it clear that there would be no condemnation or punishment if anyone confessed, but also added that the behavior had to stop. He had calculated the exact amount of food that we would need to comfortably survive the end of days. But now, thanks to someone's selfishness, we would have to begin rationing. A look of worry and confusion covered every face, except Saul's. He nodded along thoughtfully, but didn't seem nearly as blindsided by the announcement as the rest of us. Noah noticed it too, and from that day on, he began to keep a closer eye on his younger brother. It wasn't easy. Saul had a way of disappearing and reappearing around the corners of the bunker's twisting hallways. He was always there to report you for cursing after you stubbed your toe or for taking a break during morning chores. If he didn't want to be found, however, he was almost impossible to pin down. The thought that he was tracing our movements using echoes in the pipes sent a shiver up my spine. Our supplies, meanwhile, continued to disappear. The theft continued until Easter, when Noah said he had an announcement to make. "So do I," Saul shouted, cutting him off. "Noah is the thief." Noah was flabbergasted. It was clear that he had been about to accuse Saul of the same thing, but by beating him to it, his younger brother had stolen his credibility. "You're not even eating them," Noah whined, as Father Isaac separated the two fighting brothers. "You're just throwing them away." Saul stared at Noah. Anger had twisted his face into something unfamiliar and wrong. For a second, I didn't recognize my own brother. "Someone is watching who hears your lies," he snarled. "And you will not escape from judgment." That, too, turned out to be a prophecy of sorts, because Noah didn't wake up the following morning. To all appearances, his heart had just stopped in his sleep, but I couldn't help suspecting there was more to it than that. Noah and his little brother shared a room, after all, and was it really possible that Saul hadn't noticed his death overnight? Not unless he caused it, I remember thinking darkly. Father Isaac didn't dare risk our lives by returning to the surface for Noah's burial, so we gave him last rites and disposed of his body the only way we could, in pieces with the trash. We could hear Father Isaac sobbing in the kitchen as he swung the meat cleaver. Judith murmured a prayer. I looked at my shoes. Only Saul was smiling. Our family was never the same after that. On the surface, life continued just as before. The same meals, the same prayers, the same daily rituals, but the joy had gone out of it. We no longer splashed each other with our mop buckets during chores, and the soccer ball no longer boomed against the walls of the empty storage room after dinner. Without Noah's steady, high-pitched voice, even the hymns we sang felt different. Meanwhile, our issues with the bunker continued. The lights went out in the wing where Saul slept. Father Isaac thought that maybe rats had chewed through the cords, but there had been no sign of vermin during the entire 2.5 years that we'd been living underground. Later, several leaks appeared in the same hallway. No matter how many of them we patched, more kept appearing, filling the area with puddles, mildew, and a maddening dripping sound. I didn't understand how Saul could stand it down there, but the truth was, I was glad to see less of him. Father Isaac and Judith may have been baffled by the power outages and plumbing issues, but I wasn't. More and more, I was convinced that Saul was sabotaging the bunker. I didn't want to believe it, because that might mean that my other, fouler suspicions about Noah's death were also true. It was only then that the bunker began to feel like a prison. We were living on half rations, in the dark most of the time. Constant exposure to the damp, moldy air had caused all of us to develop a worrying cough. Worst of all, however, were the problems with the water supply. One morning, we woke up to find the faucets sputtering and spitting a disgusting gray sludge. It was as though the well we depended on had somehow gone dry. Father Isaac agonized over the problem for days, asking aloud whether this was a sign that we should finally leave the bunker. After all, we could live with minimal food and light, but we couldn't live without water. Then, on the third day, the water came back without warning, flowing from the taps in a glorious, clear flood. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We chugged it down, practically shoving one another away from the faucets as we fought to drink our fill. We were all so desperately thirsty that none of us, not even Father Isaac, thought to boil it first. A few hours later, Father Isaac, Judith, and I were hunched over on the shower room floor, vomiting a thin black liquid into the drain. Even after there was nothing left in my stomach, my body kept convulsing, fighting to free itself from whatever corruption had taken hold inside. I don't recall much of what happened after that. I drifted in and out of sickening dreams. One in which Judith was curled up nude in the corner of the bathroom, howling like an animal. Another in which Father Isaac smashed his face into the mirror again and again, begging for forgiveness. A third in which Saul crawled across the ceiling with his head twisted around backwards, staring down at us with hollow, empty eyes. Maybe I'm already dead, I remember thinking. Maybe this is hell. When I awoke 72 hours later, the mirror lay in shattered fragments on the bathroom floor. Judith, Father Isaac, and I seemed to have made an unspoken agreement to never speak of those feverish days. It was as though we were all somehow ashamed of them, although I couldn't have said why. Only Saul seemed to have been completely unaffected by the sickness, just as he was unbothered by the dark and damp. If anything, he seemed more comfortable in it. Father Isaac decreed that from now on, all water had to be boiled at least 20 minutes before use. For us, that meant less energy and even more darkness. I came to dread each trip I made into the lightless parts of the bunker. Whenever I rounded a corner, I was sure Saul would be there, observing me in the pitch blackness. When the family was gathered together, he acted almost normal, but I was afraid of what he might do if he caught me alone. 5 months later, Judith's pregnancy began to show. I knew the facts of life, just as I knew that neither I nor my younger brother could be the father, which left only one extremely uncomfortable possibility. A miracle is in our midst, Father Isaac declared. An immaculate conception. With the arrival of this child, perhaps our long time of trial will finally come to an end. I wasn't fully sure that I believed Father Isaac's words, but the strangest part was, both he and Judith did. Maybe I'm wrong again, I remember thinking. Maybe my family really has been chosen by God, and I just don't have enough faith to see it. 15 months later, however, the food had almost run out, and Judith still hadn't given birth. It shouldn't have been medically possible, especially considering how underfed we all were, but I couldn't deny the evidence of my own eyes. At first, Judith had been radiant. She had hung on Father Isaac's words, trusting that what she carried inside was a miracle baby. Yet as the months passed, my kind and charming sister became increasingly withdrawn. Eventually, Judith stopped speaking altogether. She spent more and more time in bed, eyes closed, hands folded atop her growing belly. Apart from her shallow breathing, I could barely tell that she was alive at all. Father Isaac, too, had taken a step back from family life. He wandered through the hallways like a lost explorer without a compass, muttering prayers, starting projects, and leaving the work half finished. He seemed to have finally reached the limits of his conviction. With Judith incapacitated and Father Isaac unhinged, the burden of maintaining our underground home fell entirely on my shoulders. Tasks that had previously been done by all 5 of us were now mine alone. It was too much, especially considering how malnourished I was, and I wound up focusing on only the basics: keeping us fed, caring for Bedard and Judith, and plugging the worst of the leaks in the rear hallway. One afternoon, when I was spooning some thin, tasteless vegetable broth between Judith's lips, her eyes suddenly snapped open. She grabbed my hand and placed it on her stomach, which was too big now to be contained by any clothing. "You know," Judith whispered, "this thing I've got inside, I don't think it's human. Can't you feel it?" Something pulsed beneath Judith's skin. It reminded me unsettlingly of a squirming fish eager to escape from a net. I wanted to say something to comfort her, but I couldn't find the words. And then the lights went out. It was the beginning of the end. With the power gone, we had no way to boil water, warm food, or control the temperature of our subterranean prison. During the past 3 years and 11 months, we had burned through more than just food. All of our supplies were worn down or used up, and I knew that the batteries in my flashlight were on their last legs. Unless I could convince Father Isaac to open the hatch, we would all soon be stumbling through a dark and suffocating nightmare. Judith screamed. I felt her flesh contract beneath my hand. Her child was about to arrive. I was fumbling around for my flashlight when someone tugged on the back of my shirt. "Leave," Saul commanded. I finally got my flashlight working, and in its flickering beam I could see the terror on Judith's face, the beads of sweat forming on her forehead, the bluish veins pulsing beneath her pale skin. Saul watched our sister writhe and claw at the sheets with patient, impassive eyes, like he already knew what the outcome would be. Leaving a child of his age in charge of a birth was insanity, but it was clear to me by now that Saul was no ordinary child. "Leave," Saul repeated, and to my shame, I did. I ignored my sister's pleading eyes and backed out of her cramped bedroom, unwilling to witness what was about to happen. I didn't think my mind could endure it. As I retreated down the hallway, I heard Saul singing some sort of lullaby. I didn't know the tune, but the words seemed to be in the same language that he'd been using to communicate with the voice inside the pipes. I switched off my flashlight and listened to the echoes reverberating through the pitch-black hallways, the dripping of water, the screams of my sister. That strange, haunting song. Several hours later, the screams stopped, replaced by an infant's wailing cries. As I switched my flashlight back on, I noticed how much dimmer the light had become. At the edge of its beam, I saw Saul walking toward me, rocking a cloth-wrapped bundle in his arms. Running footsteps came up behind me. "Does the child live?" Father Isaac wanted to know. He didn't say a word about my sister. This was his last hope, I realized. He needed this child to be a sign from God that our tribulations were at an end. At the same time, just like me, he hadn't been able to face whatever had happened in Judith's room. Suddenly, Saul stopped singing. "It is time for you to open the door," he ordered. Father Isaac hesitated and instinctively grasped the key around his neck. He still saw himself as being in charge of our welfare. And what if Saul was wrong? Was it really safe to go outside? He told my younger brother that he would pray on it. Saul shrugged, placed the wailing bundle on the floor, and walked into the darkness of the kitchen. Father Isaac, meanwhile, turned on his own flashlight and approached Judith's offspring. I didn't see what was beneath the cloth when he pulled it back, but I did see the look of revulsion on his face. Seconds later, Saul reappeared behind him, the meat cleaver raised high above his head. It was the same one that had been used to dismember Noah's corpse so many months before, and now Saul was swinging it at Father Isaac's leg like a lumberjack felling a tree. Father Isaac went down with a grunt, and Saul redirected his strikes at our father's head. Even as the blade hacked into his face, even as the blood blinded him, even as he screamed, I don't think that Father Isaac was fully able to process what was happening. Despite all the impossible things he'd seen during our time in the bunker, he couldn't bring himself to believe that his own favorite son would turn on him. I didn't stick around to help. Instead, I ran to Judith's room, already expecting what I might find but praying that I was wrong. Just as I'd feared, my sister lay lifeless atop her sheets, which had been stained inky black. My flashlight flickered. Then, somewhere in the depths of the bunker, I heard a loud metallic groan. Saul had Father Isaac's key. He was unsealing the door. With horror, I realized what my younger brother's next move was going to be. He would just lock me down here and throw away the key. No one would ever know what he had done, what he had become, or what he was bringing out into the world with him. I raced toward the ladder, arriving just in time to see a circle of bright daylight at the base of the ladder in the living room. Slowly, it began to disappear. Saul was already closing the hatch. I begged my malnourished body for one final burst of energy and flung myself up the rungs. My fingers touched dirt just in time for Saul to slam the door shut on top of them. I howled in pain, but didn't let go. If I did, it would mean cannibalism, starvation, and a lonely death in the dark. As Saul lifted the hatch to crush my hands for a second time, I stuck both arms out into the grass and felt around until I grasped something. The eerily whining bundle of cloth that Saul had carried up with him. I pulled it towards me and flung it down into the darkness. Saul let out an inhuman screech and leapt down after it. I didn't wait around to see if the pair of them had survived the fall. Blinded by sunlight that I hadn't seen in 4 years, I staggered around Father Isaac's property until I found the two-lane road that passed in front of our old driveway. Nobody stopped for me, and I can't say I blame them. With my ragged clothes, bulging eyes, and emaciated body, I must have looked like something out of a horror story. Eventually, though, somebody did call the police. It took the authorities a long time to derive a coherent story from my babbling, and even longer to actually investigate the bunker that I kept rambling on about. By the time they did, Saul and the child were long gone. I was kept under guard in a hospital room while doctors raced to save me from malnutrition and a host of infections I didn't even know I had. Meanwhile, a team of police psychiatrists tried to piece together the truth about what had transpired in Father Isaac's bunker. They chalked up the most unbelievable parts of my tale to the effects of lifelong religious brainwashing, or perhaps even fever-induced hallucinations. No attempt was made to seriously investigate my claims. According to the official story, Father Isaac had killed all of my siblings and then himself. It was a neatly wrapped, easy-to-digest story. The fanatical preacher who torments his innocent family and ultimately loses his mind. Of course, it didn't explain how Father Isaac had managed to hack the back of his own leg with a cleaver, nor did it address the strange black ichor found in Judith's bed. Simply put, it was a way for the underfunded, understaffed authorities to wash their hands of the whole thing. For me, forgetting wasn't quite so easy. After I recovered, I made some investigations of my own, and the results were troubling. It turned out that the well that Father Isaac had ordered dug to supply the bunker with water had tapped into an enormous subterranean reservoir. Even now, the researchers whom I contacted remain unsure of just how deep it really goes. And what about Saul and the strange child? It was far more difficult to track their progress, and in the end, it was a missing persons podcast which provided the lead I was looking for. Apparently, 2 nights after I escaped from the bunker, a woman had disappeared nearby. Her name was Jocelyn S. She had been driving back from a late shift at a 24-hour breakfast spot when she'd spotted a young blonde boy standing on the side of the foggy midnight road, holding what looked like a bundle of rags. He seemed pale and unhealthy, and Jocelyn had stopped to ask if he was all right. When he said he needed a ride, Jocelyn let him into the back seat of her car. Apparently, the boy hadn't expected her to call her sister during the drive and explain what was going on. When Jocelyn began to give a physical description of the boy and where she'd found him, something strange had happened. Her words died in her throat with a choking sound, and the line had gone dead. Jocelyn's car was later discovered, intact and unharmed, in the parking lot of a thrift store a few towns over. There was a bus station a few blocks away, leading most people to conclude that Jocelyn had simply dropped the child off and decided to run away from her life. After all, the podcast presenters pointed out, she had significant debt and more than one violent ex-boyfriend. Jocelyn's sister, however, wasn't so sure. She was convinced that the strangled cry on the end of the line meant foul play. It had been Jocelyn's weird passengers, not Jocelyn herself, who had gotten onto a bus and disappeared, or at least, that was what her sister told the podcast presenters. For them, it was just entertainment, a fun little mystery for their listeners to puzzle over. But for me, finding out what happened to Saul was deadly serious. I contacted the bus stations along the route, hoping for a sighting, security camera footage, anything. For weeks, there was no response. Then, a board desk worker reached out to me by email. "It might be something, it might be nothing," he wrote, "but I've got something you ought to see." It was a blurry photo of bus station bathroom graffiti. 2 short, sinister lines that chilled my blood. "Be wary of little children," singing by the roadside. That was it. No signature, no phone number, no further information. It was like my younger brother had vanished into thin air. In my heart, however, I know he's still out there, along with whatever he brought up from the bunker. I don't know what the voice underground has planned for him, or what will happen when its child finally grows up. But when it does, I have a feeling that my family's fears about the apocalypse might finally come true. I didn't go out there because I believed in ghosts. I went because my friend did, and because he'd been texting me for a week straight like a kid trying to convince his mom to buy a new game. "Dude, it's not just some abandoned campground," he said, tapping the steering wheel with one hand while the other held his phone up like he was presenting evidence in court. "People swear it's haunted. People swear everything is haunted," I told him. "My aunt thinks the microwave is possessed because it beeps twice." He laughed, but it wasn't his normal laugh. He had that wired excitement behind it, the kind he got when he'd been doom-scrolling conspiracy threads. We were on a narrow 2-lane road with trees packed tight on both sides. The sun was already low enough that the light through the branches looked stretched and thin, like someone had smeared gold paint across glass. He had insisted we go late because, quote, "It's only creepy if it's near dark," which is how you know a guy doesn't actually believe he's going to get hurt. If he did, he'd want noon and a crowd and cell service. "What's the name again?" I asked. He hesitated. "It's not really on the signs anymore." "That's comforting." He rolled his eyes. "It used to be a youth camp. Then it became a park-run campground. Then they shut it down. Why? Budget. Vandals. Whatever." He shrugged, but he was still smiling. "Also, listen, There was that hiker who went missing last month off the trail near it. I stared at him. You're just now mentioning that? It's the whole point, he said, like it was obvious. People online are saying they heard crying out there. Like, real crying. And the park says it's probably coyotes. Which is what they always say. So you read a forum post and decided to become a volunteer search party. Not a search party, he said quickly. Just looking, seeing if it's true. I watched the tree line whip past. Every now and then a reflective post would flash in our headlights like an eye. And the missing hiker? I asked, did they find anything? A backpack? Footprints? A phone? He shook his head. No, just gone. The article said he stepped off the trail for a bathroom break and didn't come back. That's not a horror story, I said. That's a guy who got lost and died. He glanced at me, offended. You always do that. You always make it boring. Boring is how you survive. He made a noise like that was cute, turned off onto a gravel road, and the car started rattling like it had suddenly remembered it was made of parts. No service bars. My phone went to SOS and stayed there. He didn't notice, or pretended not to. A broken wooden sign appeared in the headlights, half swallowed by vines. The lettering was faded, like the sun had licked it blank. I could just make out camp before the rest disappeared. We drove past an old entrance gate hanging open on one hinge. It feels like we're trespassing, I said. It's public land. He replied immediately, too rehearsed. It's just closed. There's a difference. Uh-huh. He parked in a dirt turnaround that used to be an actual lot. There were potholes deep enough to hide in. Grass grew up through the cracked asphalt like veins. We got out, both of us doing that automatic pause people do when they step into real quiet. The air smelled like wet leaves and old wood. Somewhere deeper in the trees, something tapped, branch on branch, or something walking. He slung his backpack on, flashed his phone flashlight like a weapon, and grinned at me. All right, he said. You ready to get haunted? I wasn't, but I followed him anyway. The campground wasn't just abandoned. It was left behind. Cabins with broken windows and peeled paint sat in rows like teeth. Picnic tables were tipped on their sides, half sunk into mud. A dead fire ring filled with wet ash looked like a mouth. There were old bulletin boards with warped plexiglass, the paper inside still visible in places, faded camp rules, maps, a schedule of activities from years ago. It looked like the place had stopped mid-sentence and never started again. He walked ahead like he owned it. I walked behind, scanning without meaning to, tree line, cabin corners, anywhere something could be watching. See? He whispered, like whispering made it more real. This is perfect. Perfect for tetanus, I muttered. He snorted. We moved deeper, following an old gravel path. It had been a loop once, but now it was just a scar in the ground. The woods were reclaiming it in slow bites. Then I saw the first thing that made my skin tighten. A strip of cloth caught on a low branch. Not old camp gear. Not a faded flag or a torn tarp. It was newer, dark fabric, like a sleeve. I stopped and stared. What? He called from a few steps ahead. I pointed. That. He walked back, leaned in, and frowned. Could be trash, he said. It's not sun-bleached. It's not old. He reached for it, then stopped like he remembered he wasn't supposed to touch evidence. Maybe someone camped here recently, he said, but his voice didn't have the same bounce now. We kept going. The cloth stayed in my head like a bad taste. The farther in we went, the more the place felt staged. Not in a movie way, in a wrong way. Like the trees were arranged to hide things. Like every open space had too many blind corners. He kept talking to fill the silence. That's what he does when he's nervous, jokes, stories, anything to keep the air from getting heavy. You know what the thread said? He whispered. It said if you stand by the old mess hall and listen, you can hear kids crying. Kids crying where? I asked. Into the void. He elbowed me. Don't ruin it. We came to a cluster of buildings at the center. A larger cabin that might have been the office, a long, low structure with a collapsed roof, and, bizarrely, a small schoolhouse. I stopped. A school. I said, Here. Yeah, he said, pleased. I was impressed. They did classes during the summer. Like wilderness education. Or whatever. The schoolhouse was broken in a way that didn't feel accidental. One whole side was caved in, like something heavy had leaned its shoulder into it. Boards hung loose. The window frames were empty mouths. We stepped up to it, and he nudged the door, which creaked open like it hated us. Inside, the air was colder. Not cool. Cold, like the building held on to shade as a substance. There were desks piled in a corner. A chalkboard with smeared writing so faint it looked like the ghost of a sentence. Someone had spray-painted something on the wall years ago, but the paint had run with rain until it looked like dripping veins. Okay, I said. This is legitimately creepy. He grinned, triumphant. Told you. We took a break just outside the schoolhouse where the ground was flatter. He pulled a water bottle out, took a long drink, then immediately pulled out his phone. Pictures, he said. For proof. For proof of what? That we're idiots? He ignored me, angled his phone, and snapped a few shots with the flash. The light made the dark woods behind us look like a cardboard backdrop. Stand there, he said. By the door. Hold your light like you're investigating. I sighed but did it because I'm not immune to being the guy in the photo. He took another shot, laughed, and checked the screen. Then his smile faltered. What? I asked. Nothing, he said too fast. Show me. He hesitated, then handed me the phone. The picture was normal at first glance. Me standing by the broken door, flashlight in hand, face caught mid-annoyance. But behind me, deeper in the woods where the flash didn't fully reach, there were two pale dots. Perfectly round, evenly spaced, not reflective like a deer's eyes, not shimmering, just two little white points floating in the darkness like someone had stuck pins through a black sheet. My stomach dropped. That's a raccoon, he said immediately, too loudly. They do that. A raccoon is down low, I said. Those are higher. He laughed, forcing it. It's perspective. Come on. He took the phone back like he didn't want me holding it too long, like staring at it might make it real. We should have left then. If I'm honest, I wanted to. I had that gut heaviness, the one that says go home even if your brain can't explain why. But he was already moving again, dragging me with his momentum. That's his gift. He can make you feel stupid for being cautious. We walked past the schoolhouse and into the heart of the old campground. There were trails branching off, some marked by dead wooden signs, some just faint impressions in the ground. Where's the mess hall? I asked. He pointed to the long, low building with the collapsed roof. That. As we got closer, the smell changed. Not rot, not mildew, something sharper. Like old meat left in a cooler too long. He didn't seem to notice, or pretended not to. We stepped into the mess hall through a gap in the wall where boards had fallen away. The roof sagged overhead like it was holding its breath. Inside, there were long tables flipped and broken. The kitchen area was gutted, appliances missing, tile ripped up. The floor was littered with debris and other things. Clothing. More clothing. A sock. A ripped flannel. A pair of jeans tangled around a chair leg like someone had stepped out of them mid-stride. My friend's voice went quieter. Okay, he said, and for the first time he sounded like he actually believed himself. That's not normal. I didn't answer. I was listening, because under the noise of our footsteps and the creak of the building, I thought I heard something else. A sound like wet breathing, not in the room, in the walls. I turned my flashlight slowly, sweeping the beam across the corners. Nothing moved, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted its weight the moment my light passed over it. Like you look away from a shadow, and it changes shape. We got out of the mess hall fast. Outside, the light was lower now. Sunset creeping in. The sky beyond the trees had that bruised purple tint. That's when we heard the crying. At first it was so faint I thought it was wind, or a bird doing a weird call. Then it sharpened. A human sob. A woman, maybe, breath catching on each sound like she was trying not to make noise and failing. My friend's eyes widened. "Dude," he whispered, like he was thrilled. I grabbed his sleeve. "Stop." He froze, looking at me like I'd slapped him. That's what they said," he murmured. "The thread said." "I don't care what the thread said." I cut in. "That's either someone hurt, or someone messing with us, or an animal that sounds human. Either way, we don't go toward it." He looked past me, into the trees. The crying stopped. Silence snapped into place like a lid. Then, somewhere farther out, there was a scream. Not the earlier kind of scream you imagine in scary stories. This one was pain. It cut off too fast, like a switch. My friend went pale. "You heard that, right?" he said. "Yeah," I whispered. He swallowed hard. "We should go." I didn't argue. We started back the way we came, faster now, trying not to let it turn into a run because running makes you loud and stupid. That's when I saw the hand. It wasn't in the open. It was half hidden behind the trunk of a pine, fingers wrapped around the bark like someone peeking around a door frame. Except the fingers were too long, and the nails, if they were nails, caught the last of the daylight and looked like dull bone. Claws. I stopped dead. My friend took 2 more steps before he noticed I wasn't beside him anymore. "What?" he said, annoyed, then saw my face and followed my gaze. The hand was gone. The tree was just a tree again. My friend forced a laugh that sounded like his throat didn't agree with it. "Okay," he said. That's probably a branch." "Or, there were fingers," I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it. We kept moving. Only now, every tree felt like it had something behind it. We were about halfway back to the schoolhouse when the path dipped slightly and the trees opened up into a small clearing. And there it was. A deer. At first glance it looked normal enough, standing in the clearing, head tilted slightly, ears forward. Then my brain caught up. It was too thin. Not just winter thin. Starved thin. Ribs visible under patchy fur. Skin stretched tight over the bones like shrink wrap. Its legs looked wrong too. Long, spindly, joints seeming just a little too high. It stood perfectly still, watching us. My friend let out a nervous breath and tried to recover his vibe, tried to make it a joke again. "Look at this guy," he said, forcing a chuckle. "Bro looks like he owes money." I couldn't help it. Part of me laughed, because humor is a pressure valve. The deer took a slow step toward us. I noticed its coat wasn't brown the way it should have been. In the fading light, it looked pale, grayish, like the color had been drained out and replaced with something dead. "Okay," my friend said, and now the joke was gone. "That's not healthy." The deer's head tilted. Then it did something that made my stomach turn over. It smiled. Not a deer expression. Not that weird lip curl animals do. A smile that belonged to something that understood what a smile meant. My friend whispered, "What the?" The deer lifted its head, and for a second, the angle of its jaw showed something that didn't fit. Skin that wasn't deer skin. Pale, almost gray. And then it stepped closer, and I saw it clearly enough that my brain tried to reject it. Under the deer's face, beneath the muzzle, where shadow should have been, there was a human face. Not attached like a mask someone wore, not dangling like a trophy. It was embedded, like the deer's skull had grown around it. Pale skin pulled tight, lips cracked, eyes half-lidded like it was asleep. But when it opened its mouth, the human face moved too, like they were sharing the same throat. My friend made a sound like he was trying not to throw up. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." The deer took another step, close enough now that I could smell it. That same sharp, sick smell from the mess hall, like meat turned sour. I backed up slowly. My friend did too. The deer's ears twitched, and it lowered its head like it was going to charge. And because my friend was still trying to be a person in a situation that didn't allow it, he did the dumbest thing possible. He pointed at it and said, voice shaky but loud, "Hey, get out of here." The deer froze. The human face under it opened its eyes. And I swear to you, it looked directly at my friend. The deer's mouth opened. The sound that came out wasn't a deer noise. It was a voice. A woman's voice, ragged and thin. "Help me." My friend's face twisted, like every protective instinct he had was waking up at once. He took a step forward without thinking. I grabbed his arm. "No." The deer's head jerked sharply, like it didn't like being ignored. Then it moved. Not like an animal, like something that had been waiting for permission. It lunged, but not at my friend. At me. I barely had time to throw my arm up before something hit me with the force of a car crash. I felt claws, not imagined now, real, rake across my forearm, tearing through fabric and skin. Pain flashed hot, immediate, and my flashlight flew out of my hand, tumbling into the dirt. I fell hard onto my back, the air punched out of me. The world tilted, trees and sky spinning. I tried to scramble up, but the deer was already on top of me. Only it wasn't a deer anymore. Its body twisted in a way that didn't make sense. Like its spine had too many joints. Like it could fold itself into shapes animals can't. The human face under its muzzle opened its mouth wider than a human mouth should be able to open. And the voice that came out changed. It became my friend's voice. "Dude, come on, help me." My friend froze. I saw it happen in real time, his brain trying to process his own voice coming from that. And that hesitation was all it needed. The thing lifted one hoof, except it wasn't a hoof. The end of its legs split and spread like fingers, tipped with dark, blunt nails, and slammed it down beside my head like it was pinning me, like it knew exactly how to keep me from moving. Then it turned on my friend. My friend shouted my name and rushed forward like an idiot hero, swinging his backpack like it was a weapon. The creature didn't flinch. It snapped its head down and bit him. Not a deer bite, not a nip. A full mouth clamp on his shoulder that lifted him off his feet. I heard his bones make a sound I still hear when it's quiet. He screamed, and the scream turned into choking, wet panic. The creature shook him once, like a dog with a toy. Then it threw him. He hit the ground hard, rolled, tried to get up, and the creature was already on him again. I forced myself to move. My arm burned. Blood slicked down my wrist. My fingers felt numb, like my hand didn't belong to me anymore. I crawled toward my flashlight and grabbed it with my good hand, beam wobbling wildly as I aimed it at them. The light hit the creature's side, and I got the long look I didn't want. Its body was deer-shaped but wrong in every detail. Emaciated ribs under sparse fur, pale gray skin stretched tight, like it was wearing its own body as a costume. Along its flank, patches of skin looked almost human. Smooth, hairless, too pale. And the face. That human face under the deer's muzzle wasn't a dead thing stitched on. It was alive, The eyes rolled. The mouth worked, lips trembling like it was trying to speak separately. It looked terrified. It looked trapped. Then it smiled again, and the smile wasn't the trapped faces, it was the creatures. Something deeper behind it, something wearing that face like bait. My friend was on the ground trying to crawl away, leaving a dark smear in the dirt. He looked at me, eyes wide, panic turning into pure pleading. "Run," he gasped. The creature lifted its head and stared at me. For a second, we locked eyes, and I understood something without knowing how I knew it. It had been following us the whole time. The clothes weren't random. They were a trail, a way to keep us moving deeper, a way to make us curious, to keep us from turning back too soon. The crying, the screams, the voices, all of it was a leash. The creature let out a sound that wasn't a screech, not yet. More like a breathy laugh in a throat that didn't know how to laugh. Then it stepped toward me. I did the only thing I could think of. I shoved the flashlight beam straight into its face and screamed. Not at it, just screamed, raw and animal, like volume could become force. The creature recoiled for half a second, head jerking back, the human face under it blinking rapidly like it hated the light. That half second was enough. I got up. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't pick a direction. I just ran toward where I thought the schoolhouse was, because the path back had to be near it. Behind me, my friend screamed again. The sound cut off too fast, like a switch. I didn't look back. I heard something behind me though, footsteps, but not normal. Too light for its size. Too fast. Then the voice came again, right behind my ear, perfect and calm. My own voice. "Stop running." My stomach flipped. I stumbled, nearly fell, caught myself on a tree. My injured arm screamed pain as bark scraped the open cuts. I kept going. The schoolhouse appeared ahead like a miracle, its broken outline against the trees. I sprinted toward it, burst around the corner, and nearly slammed into the wall because my legs were shaking too hard to steer. I fumbled my phone out with numb fingers. No service. I wasn't surprised. I still felt betrayed. I shoved it back and grabbed my car keys, because keys are something solid and real, and my brain needed that. I ran past the schoolhouse, back toward the main path, toward the entrance. The woods felt different now, too quiet, like everything had stopped to watch. I could hear my own breath, ragged and loud. I could hear my heartbeat. I could hear something else too, soft, quick steps keeping pace just out of my peripheral vision. I caught a glimpse of movement to my left, a shape behind the trees, not fully visible, just the suggestion of long limbs and pale skin and that white dot stare. I ran harder. My lungs burned. My vision tunneled. Tears streaked my face without me realizing I was crying. Then the path opened up and I saw the parking lot. The car sat where we left it, dull and innocent under the dead light. I hit the driver's side door and yanked it open so hard it almost bounced back. I didn't even close it. I just threw myself inside, slammed the keys into the ignition, and turned. The engine coughed once. Nothing. My blood went cold. I turned again, harder, like force could make it behave. The engine sputtered and caught. I didn't waste a second. I threw it into reverse, tires spitting gravel. As I backed out, I saw it. At the edge of the lot, half in the trees, the deer stood watching. Except now it wasn't pretending as well. Its head hung at a wrong angle, neck bent like it had too many hinges. The human face under it was slack and open-mouthed like it was mid-cry. Two white dots stared at me from the dark behind the face. Not eyes reflecting light. Eyes that looked like they produced their own. The deer stepped forward. And the voice came again, my friend's voice, soft and broken like it was right outside my window. "Wait." It sounded like him on his worst day. It sounded like him calling me back from a doorway. My hands shook so badly, I nearly lost the wheel. I hit the gas. The car jerked forward, gravel spraying. I didn't stop until we hit the main road. Then I kept going until the trees thinned and I saw street lights and someone else's headlights, and I finally felt like the world belonged to humans again. I pulled into the first gas station I saw and stumbled into the bathroom, shaking, and stared at my arm in the mirror. For long claw marks. Deep, angry red, already swelling. My sleeve was shredded and stuck to my skin with blood. I washed it as best I could with trembling hands, wrapped it in paper towels like that would somehow make it less real, and sat on the curb outside until my breathing slowed. I called 911 the moment I had service. I told them everything, but you know how it sounds when you say it out loud. Abandoned campground. Weird deer. Human face. My friend. Silence on the line while the dispatcher tried to decide where to put me in their mental filing cabinet. They sent deputies. Search and rescue. Park rangers. The whole machine. They found the campground. They found the schoolhouse. They found the mess hall with the clothes. They found my flashlight. They did not find my friend. They said there were no tracks consistent with an animal attack. They said the clothing looked like unauthorized campers. They said they'd continue searching. And the last thing the lead ranger asked me, quietly, like he didn't want the deputies to hear, was this: "Did it try to talk to you?" I stared at him. He didn't look surprised when I didn't answer right away. He just nodded slowly, like he already knew. They shut the area down harder after that. More fencing, more signs, patrols. People online say it's because of vandalism and unsafe structures. But I know what's out there, and I know what it can do with a voice. Because 3 nights after it happened, while I was sitting on my couch with my arm wrapped and my phone clenched in my hand like a lifeline, I got a text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. A dark picture taken with flash. It showed the broken schoolhouse door. And in the doorway, barely caught by the light, was a deer-shaped body with pale gray skin and a human face hanging under its muzzle. The human face was looking straight at the camera. Its eyes were wet. And behind it, deeper in the darkness, were 2 white dots, steady and unblinking, watching from inside the building like it was someone's home now. I deleted the photo. Then I turned my phone off. Like that matters. I was 8 years old when I lost my older brother. I wanted to keep him. I even asked Santa not to let him be taken away. I guess that was too much of an ask. Now, we're snowed in together for the weekend, and we're working out what to do with the discovery we've made while clearing out the basement of our late parents. It may come across as a cliche, but 9/11 really did change everything. Things weren't exactly idyllic, but we were happy and cared for. But then the 90s were over. My never-ending childhood suddenly ended when my brother signed up for the army and was deployed to Afghanistan. He came back. Most of him, at least. It was hard to pinpoint what was gone, but somewhere between basic training and the rest of his service, something changed. Our relationship surely had. Mom and I said it was like he had been swapped with an alien. Her blood pressure soared while he was overseas and only continued to climb even when he came back, eventually leading to a stroke. I stayed home to take care of Mom for years, but it didn't prevent her premature death. While I hated to see her go, we were all thankful, I'm sure, that it had been relatively peaceful and in her own bed. While I was taking care of Mom, my older brother built his career and a family. We kept in touch. He visited and helped with the bills, but there was still a barrier. Not just with me, but his kids. Somewhere along the way, I changed from the cool, fun, artsy aunt. Instead, I had been turned into the failure-to-launch loser who still lived at home in her 30s with zero prospects. A boogie woman for what they would become if they didn't work hard in school and have a plan. Naturally, this ignored all the circumstances of why I stayed home to begin with, not to mention my own mental health struggles in reference to the aforementioned, but I digress. Dad's health experienced a pretty significant decline during this time as well. He was struggling with retirement, and while he had always been a tinkerer and collector, the scrap metal he accumulated in the basement was beginning to look pathological. And when I say retirement, I mean a permanent, forced medical leave. Teaching the local history of South Jersey and folklore of the Pine Barrens hadn't just been a vocation, it was his calling. But something terrible had gripped his mind. As soon as Mom passed, he, too, needed round-the-clock care. Dad had no outlet as a teacher without his students, except for Reddit, which was a godsend. For privacy's sake, I won't out his profile or the subreddit. Please don't dox me or us. Thanks. But he was a top poster in a great but strict historical sub, until being banned for his increasing inability to distinguish folklore from historical reality. It was the saddest I'd ever seen him, I think. When he lost his job or during Mom's decline and death, he kept a stoic front. But Dad was no longer the same man he had once been, and he couldn't hold back. He lost all sense of normality he had, and that was the final straw. When he finally realized why he couldn't respond, he cried and cried. It killed him. Thankfully, setting up a Reddit clone was easy enough, and I paid someone much smarter than me to build a bot that responded to his rambling with thank yous, follow-up questions, that sort of thing, to keep him engaged. Judge me or my way of handling it if you like, I don't care. For the last year of his life, Dad reclaimed a facsimile of himself, which was better than nothing. Now, they're both gone. My life was so full for so long, even accounting for putting everything on hold, personally and professionally, to care for them. I'm thankful for our time together, but I've lost so much more than momentum. The pressure bubble has popped. They're gone, but I'm still here. The house has become quite still. There's nobody around who cares what I have to say throughout the day. Mom was the only one who really got me. Dad tried, but it wasn't the same with just us. And now, I don't even have that. I don't want to imply that my brother was absent during all of this. That wasn't the case. He visited with the family and spoke to Mom and Dad regularly, but I was the one handling the day-to-day. He was busy with his life, and I don't fault him for that. I just wish he were a little more understanding and a little less pushy about me getting my act together. I've been through a lot and think I deserve a little grace. It was a difficult holiday, which turned over into an exceedingly lonely January. This past week has been my first time seeing my brother since the funeral. We agree about keeping the house and the family and me staying in it, so nothing to worry about there. There may be one minor point of contention over a certain white gold ring, but that's been handled. However, the house has accumulated the detritus of a family living there continuously for over 40 years straight, and my brother's a control freak, so there's no way he'd let me go through it all without his supervision. Truth be told, I am thankful to have a hand. Plus, it'll help to have someone with business acumen to help me determine which paperwork has been pointlessly cluttering cabinets and drawers for decades, what mementos he wants for his kids, which tools and other junk I can sell on Marketplace, that sort of thing. Like many of you, we're experiencing this storm across the US, which is to say we're snowed in. I don't think my brother's timing is coincidental. And like my father, my brother's never been good at expressing his feelings. I think he sees this as an opportunity to force a painfully awkward attempt to reconnect and repair our relationship. And while, yes, Some of it was boring. We did manage to have some fun together for the first time since Bush was in office. Coming across the toys we used to fight with, together and over, including but not limited to He-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Jurassic Park, and WWF Men. I was never interested in Barbies, and Mom never called any of them action figures or dolls, only men. After sorting through our boxes of men, we rediscovered our old PlayStation. He initially dismissed it as non-functional when I sheepishly produced a missing bundle of wires from the bottom of a dusty china cabinet. I hid it when you stopped letting me hang out with you and your friends. I had so much fun that weekend they came over, and we all beat Spider-Man together. He smiled, and while it seemed whimsical, there was an underlying sentiment of regret. That was a good weekend. It started on Friday due to a snow day, right? It took us a few days, but we got through the upstairs and downstairs, and even managed to watch some old episodes of Mystery Science Theater 3000 together. That was nice. It started to feel a bit like old times. It had been frustrating being treated like I still sat at the kids' Thanksgiving table of life. With the 8-year age gap, I was always treated like the baby of the family, and I was tired of it. But we were starting to work out a dynamic of how to interact as equals. There were lectures about me finishing my bachelor's, and I even got him to try weed for the first time, which is monumental in itself. But that story's special, and it's just for us. Dr. Phil bullshit aside, things were going all right, and it was time to tackle the basement. Mom had Dad install a hook and eye at the top of the door when we were little, so we wouldn't open it and tumble down the basement steps. For some reason, it was hooked closed. I hadn't been down there since the barefoot slug incident. The less said about that, the better. Opening the door into the dust-mote-filled darkness, I nervously scrambled for the switch, hoping the inevitable cobweb was uninhabited. The speed of light was no match for the smell of must. Next, my least favorite part of the basement, the creaky wooden staircase, with just enough space between each step to reach out and grab your ankle. No me gusta. Beyond that, on a carpet that I suspect once upon a time was blue, maybe, sat a sea of disused workout equipment. Dad was an 80s fitness aficionado, old school, complete with short shorts so tight they looked painted on. Such was the style of the time. Unfortunately, it was surrounded, and in many cases buried, with cardboard boxes, plastic tubs, milk crates, anything sturdy enough to hold his hoard of scrap metal. Iron, I think. He said something about welding, but we haven't come across any equipment yet, just an angle grinder. We haven't been out to the shed yet, though that still needs to be dug out. We had to be careful because, aside from being heavy, some of it was sharp, and I'm really not trying to get a tetanus shot. I'm sort of between insurance providers at the moment. Dad loved telling us stories, which, like the post that eventually got him banned, interwove fact and folklore. He used to take us on hikes through the many trails in the wetlands and spoke a lot about bog iron, the blood of the barrens. There was a park that used to be a pioneer-era village that had used bog iron to make cannonballs for the Revolutionary War. He also loved to spook us with tales of the Jersey Devil. Dad was the youngest of 13, and his parents moved around a lot, including, for a time, the infamous Leeds house, where the Jersey Devil was born. So he said, at least. The old man loved his stories. The densest concentration of junk was the space under the stairs. Stacks and stacks of it. I guess you could say that we didn't need any of the newly uncovered workout equipment to pump iron. I didn't realize how much had accumulated. Had he really done this all by himself? By the time we got most of it out, my brother went upstairs to give a call to his wife and kids. There was no cell service down there, our only entertainment being a radio from the 90s. More than a few alt-rock mix CDs were the soundtrack to our winter cleaning. Blink-182, Harvey Danger, Evanescence. But for some reason, as that corner under the stairs cleared, the radio became staticky. Maybe all of the iron moving around is causing some sort of magnetic interference. I don't know. I have no idea if that's how that stuff works, but it sounds smart. Alone, sitting on the bench press, flipping through an unearthed issue of Fangoria, I realized that the paint-stained blue tarpaulin across the room, under the stairs, was covering something more substantial than random scrap or an exercise bike. There wasn't much left on top of it, and approaching it, I rearranged the position of a plastic kitty litter tub and pulled back the corner, revealing a cobblestone well covered with a 4-inch thick block of cement. I stood there, transfixed, flabbergasted, rubbing my finger along a groove formed by a deep crack along the cement lid. This had been sitting in the basement, directly below my current and childhood bedroom, for who knows how long. It definitely wasn't a recent addition. I know this had been farmland in a pilgrim village 300 plus years ago. The house must have been built on top of this old well, but why hadn't Dad mentioned anything about it to us? He definitely would have known about it, and this sort of artifact is right up his alley. Lost in thought, a noise began to escape the background ambience, gradually reaching through to me. Was that a croak? Sort of like a tree frog or cricket, but they're out of season. And there was no break. It was deep-throated, continuous, and growing louder. My eyes narrowed at the splintering concrete spreading across the lid like crumbling tributaries. Pulling my hair back, I lowered my ear to the crack. As my ear was hovering inches above the cement, a screech of static burst from the radio. I jumped and ran to turn it off. I hadn't even realized it was on. Whatever noise I heard before was gone. Feeling uneasy, I hightailed it upstairs to see my brother. I told him about the well, and after checking it out for himself, despite initial concerns, he didn't think it was an old septic tank or ancient cesspit. Discussed what we wanted to do about it. We decided that the day had been long enough and tabled further exploration until the AM. Over dinner, however, he seemed uneasy. He opened up with a little prodding, saying he had mulled over some of what Dad told him during the last months of his life. Something about building a seal. He didn't pay much mind to it at the time, and doesn't know why Dad thought he needed a seal, but it could explain why he was hoarding all of that iron. According to folklore, it repels the unholy. I typed most of this last night before passing out. Maybe it was something I ate, or watching The Ring at a formative age, but I had some weird dreams. I can see and experience bits of it in my mind's eye. It's hard to put into words. It wasn't lucid, but I think I knew it was a dream, and that I was trapped. That droning croak followed me, and something was speaking in a different language. Harsh and guttural, like German, almost, but far more vulgar. I woke up feeling hungover, but hadn't drank. Probably from all of the labor yesterday. I still felt uneasy when I realized Mom's white gold ring was missing. I don't remember if I took it off, but it wasn't where I would have put it. I tore apart my bed, checked down the seams, still nothing. I felt like shit for doing it, but I checked the guest bedroom my brother's been staying in while he was using the newly accessible gym. I guess the well doesn't creep him out as much as it does me. I opened his roller bag, and sitting right on top of it was the ring. My ring, the one his wife always stared at. I know she wanted it. She said so herself. But it was my mother's, and now it's mine. End of discussion. He swears he didn't put it there. My brother is a lot of things, stubborn, difficult, a control freak. But he's not a thief or liar. I don't know. Whatever. Putting that aside for now, it's time to crack open that well. Wish us luck. If anyone's interested, I'll post an update on what we find.